Hello, everybody. Welcome to week 4 of Learn with Lo. If you guys have been following along, you've gotten a really great taste of really letting this nutritional medicine stage shine, right? So I've really laid the foundation over our first 3 weeks of topics and content, talking about this kind of mysterious world of healthcare that people are trying to navigate now, really trying to find this mesh between this proactive healthcare model in more of a functional sense or more of the reactive sick care model in an insurance-based allopathic model, right? So in between these two worlds, I've really tried to outline for you guys what some of the pros and the cons are of really being able to manage your health these days in 2022. What does that look like? What does that look like to stay ahead of disease states versus being more reactive and kind of waiting for something to happen or waiting for symptoms to be bad enough or waiting for our labs to come through with something diagnostic that needs to be taken care of, right? And knowing that there's a lot of people out there that I see on the regular basis, I get a chance to either meet in my clinic or I get a chance to interact with on things like social media. I know that there are so many people out there that are struggling to find answers. They're struggling to find answers to their overall daily symptoms. They're struggling to find answers when they're not finding different practitioners that they're really jiving with, feeling like they're just getting brushed off and their symptoms are just being, oh, it's a normal part of aging or a normal part of womanhood, right? And kind of left in this like murky middle area of not really being able to connect to something. And then out of desperation, we try different fad diets, different elimination diets, and we kind of try to piecemeal our health on our own. And again, in my experience, it can just feel super overwhelming for the average person. I know I myself have put in years of an undergraduate degree, master's degree, over 10 years experience in the field, and I'm still constantly learning, which is fantastic. And even when we think about being proactive about our health, we have to understand that it's a multifaceted approach, but I'm very passionate about helping people recognize what the controllable things in our path are, especially what we eat, when we eat, how we eat, and really helping people kind of debunk this diet culture that, again, most of the time in my experience leads people down actually some unhealthy pathways, either physically unhealthy or even mentally unhealthy pathways, just around the relationship with food and kind of really losing that connection with food and losing the connection with our body and our body's ability to really heal itself and to take care of itself when it's given the right tools and resources. So I thank you guys for being part of this launch of this Learn with Lo series with me. I've gotten a lot of really great feedback and we're just getting started. So I'm really pumped because now that we've really set the scene for this nutritional medicine model and where my experience in business philosophy kind of comes in, we can get down to the nitty-gritty science. We can really start to build on the foundational conversations we had last week where I introduced this concept called the hormone hierarchy. The hormone hierarchy is a system that we use to put all of these different symptoms and hormonal patterns into one body, because that's exactly what we are. We're not a series of different symptoms and parts and pieces that need to be divided off into all these different specialists. It's like, how is the body functioning together as one individual unit? And really what's happening in one part of the body, the rest of the body is going to sense too, because as I dive into today, everything starts in the brain, right? Everything starts from this perceived internal and external stimuli around things like stress, things like safety, energy availability, constantly scanning the internal and external environment to really give our body one priority and one priority only, and that is survival, right? Keeping our best interests at heart. So a lot of times when the body reacts a certain way, it's doing it from a place of love. It's doing it from a place of purpose. Our body is very rarely broken and it very rarely makes a mistake. It's just our job to figure out why. Why is the body making this response? Why is the end result fatigue? Why is the end result me not being able to sleep? Why is the end result for me showing up in my skin, or showing up in my digestive patterns, or my menstrual cycles, or my cravings, or why is it showing up as my body composition or my weight? All of those things are just our body communicating with us, and sometimes we don't always like the way that it comes to compensate for our daily lifestyle choices. So that's where we really want to start to bring this conversation together full circle, so that people feel like they have places to go, and really just putting the education out there. Because again, I'm very passionate that when people understand their body, they're actually really, really capable of understanding the different nuances of really connecting the dots of, oh, that's how I should be fueling my body. Oh, that's why that particular diet that I tried felt so good for me, right? And so connecting it into just our own physiology and coming from a place of just education about how our body works. I promise you do not need a PhD to proactively manage your health. And that's exactly what I want to be here as a resource for, and help guide you guys through as well, in topics that are always relevant and pertinent to what everybody is going through these days, right? So if you guys have been following along with my Instagram story the past 24 to 48 hours, I've really been setting the stage here for what we're going to talk about today, which is stress. Last week, we talked about the concept of the hormone hierarchy, and at the foundation of our hormone hierarchy is this concept called stress management. Now, when I say stress management, I don't necessarily mean controlling all of life's stress. It's not going to happen. Don't try to do it. There's way more things about our world today that we can't control than there is things we can control. But the biggest thing is understanding that all of our stressors go into one common stress bucket. So I tend to go back and use this stress bucket analogy so that we can understand that symptoms and hormonal imbalances, and let's be real, disease states are the result of a chronically overflowing stress bucket. Now, everybody's stress bucket has a slightly different capacity, so don't try to compare yours to somebody else's, but it's really this visual that I want you guys to create in your mind around how our body works when it comes to managing stress. So all of our stressors go into one bucket, not just perceived stressors, right? So I talked about this again too on my Instagram stories, kind of really starting to plant this nugget for you guys, because when I say stress management, automatically everybody thinks about what you perceive, right? Our external environment. Oh, my spouse, or my children, or my job, or my finances, or me caretaking for loved ones, or sickness, or grief, or health problems. Absolutely. All of those things go into one common stress bucket. And so at different stages of our life, we're going to have more uncontrollable stressors at some stages of life, and we're going to have less uncontrollable stressors at other stages of life. However full your stress bucket is of uncontrollable stressors means that that is going to be your predetermined capacity, what is left over for controllable stressors. So we cannot outperform our stress bucket. There's going to be a certain level of capacity. How much extra controllable stress can you take on? And if you are in a stretch of life where your uncontrollable stressors are higher, guess what? Your body and metabolism has a very small capacity for adding more controllable stressors. Controllable stressors are going to be what you eat, when you eat, how you eat, what you're not eating enough of, what you're eating too much of, even things like our sleep, our exercise routine. All of those things are in the controllable stress bucket, right? So we may not always think about those things as stressors, but depending on our decisions around those behaviors on a daily basis, they very much could be an additional stressor. And if we're not careful, we, even with good intentions, are adding stress to an already pretty full bucket. So start to envision this stress bucket analogy and understand that there will be different times in life where your uncontrollable stressors are higher or lower, and that's going to predetermine your capacity to introduce more stress into the equation, right? So when we start to really think about the foundation of this hormone hierarchy and this concept of stress management, we're going to be dialing in first and foremost on this particular gland called your adrenals, right? Your adrenals sit right on top of your kidneys. Your adrenals are responsible for a lot of different things throughout our body. They're responsible for mineral balance. They're responsible for hydration. They're also responsible for determining and sensing different stressors, as well as blood sugar balance. So there's lots of different things that the adrenals account for. Also things like blood pressure, blood volume as well. I should mention that the adrenals are responsible for. So when we think about the adrenals in kind of our standard American diet or standard American culture, which is very much the physiology. It's overflowing stress bucket. Some people have created this term called adrenal fatigue, which you might have heard of. Adrenal fatigue as the concept is actually very outdated. It doesn't exist. It's not a if we have signs of HPA axis dysregulation. These will be things like you feel stressed often. You may struggle with specifically midsection weight gain, like that spare tire type feeling. Feeling like you're not someone that sits very well. I hear some people tell me all the time like, oh, I'm not a yoga person. That would be someone that's probably dealing with some of this HPA axis dysregulation. You feel tired and wired. You have a hard time falling asleep or staying asleep. Maybe you might wake up pretty frequently between the hours of 1 and 3 a.m. Again, a sign of adrenal stress there. You could also be someone that has a strong reliance on stimulants or caffeine, energy drinks, things like that in order to keep going throughout the day. You still feel tired even after a full night's sleep. You might struggle with things like headaches, dizzy spells. You might crave a lot of sweets and sugar, because again, remember the adrenals are responsible for blood sugar balance as well as sodium and water retention. You might also start to feel some downstream effects like poor libido, low immune function, like you get sick often or you can't kick it when you do get sick, or just in general feeling worse after exercise. So all of these things are very blanket symptoms that people deal with on a regular basis, but are kind of pushed off as normalized because these individuals could go in and complain about these symptoms to their doctor, but you run labs and on paper it's like, oh, everything looks great, right? So now you're kind of stuck with where do I go next? What do I do if seemingly my labs look great, but I don't feel great? So we really need to stop ignoring these symptoms because they are some of the first signs of some adrenal distress. And again, since these adrenals are at the foundation of our hormone hierarchy, if we're not careful, this chronic HPA axis dysregulation, it just creates a slew of other hormonal imbalances all the way up the chain. So it can be a pretty damaging metabolic cascade. First impacts that are going to be felt if this goes unregulated for quite a long time is going to be gut issues. You might see, like I said, decreased immune function or even just a slower digestive capacity. Things like chronic constipation, things like food sensitivities popping up, things like leaky gut. Those are going to be signs of kind of chronic cortisol, HPA axis dysregulation that hasn't been addressed and is now coming through as chronic gut issues. Also, it might even impact other endocrine glands such as sluggish thyroid production or decreased sex hormone production like lower testosterone levels, low progesterone levels, funky menstrual cycles. All of those things are just the result of chronic dysregulated stress. Also, even things like impacting our nervous system. So it can even go as far as affecting our body's ability to make proper neurotransmitters, things like dopamine and your neurotransmitters associated with anxiety and depression and insomnia. So a lot of people think they have a bunch of separate, all of these different issues, but like I said, it all comes back to the hormone hierarchy and marrying all these symptoms together and creating more of a root cause protocol is really where the magic happens, right? But we have to understand how the body works in order to really manage this. So just know that when we say stress management, we're really talking about this overflowing stress bucket. All of your stressors, controllable and uncontrollable stressors, perceived stressors that you know are there. You're like, yeah, I know I have a high stress job. Yeah, I know that I find motherhood or parenthood very exhausting. I know that I have more of a caretaker role for my parents right now. I know I have some past relationship issues or trauma or grief that I'm working my way through. Know that all of those perceived stressors go into one bucket, but also the unperceived stressors. So if you carrying a pretty big uncontrollable stress bucket and then you decide to try the next fad diet, you decide to cut carbs from your diet, your body's like, whoa, those are a big source of energy for me. Are you sure about that? Right? And so we're trying to hyper control things like throw a new diet into the mix, skipping meals, cutting carbs. I'm going to try a new high intensity exercise routine and join this gym and go 75 hard and do these elimination diets, and I'm gonna cut gluten out and eggs out and all these things that we like cut out, when in reality we have to make sure that we are doing this with a smart lens and understand that any fad diet, any restrictive diet, any elimination diet has to be done with a stress bucket in mind. Your body may not handle that well, and you might actually get backwards results, which is a lot of people that come to me and they're like, my husband started keto and he lost 30 pounds, and I started keto and I gained 2 pounds and my hair fell out. Yep, that is a perfect example of two wildly different stress buckets. It wasn't a stress on his body, but for your body perceived that as a stress. Same thing with things like, again, not knocking anything particular, but like an Orange Theory or a CrossFit, more of those high intensity exercise routines. I hear that all the time. Like, oh, my girlfriend signed up and she lost 12 pounds in their 12-week challenge. And I did the same challenge and gained a pound and felt miserable and couldn't sleep through the night. It's like, those are very different stress buckets and stress responses. So we have to understand the uncontrollable stressors are going to be things like diets, things like exercise routines, anything that impacts your circadian rhythm or your sleep. We have to be very, very protective of the adrenals because that's where your success is really going to happen. So when we think about, like I said, supporting the adrenals, we want to go back to just having a good understanding of how are we eating in a way that supports blood sugar balance, not necessarily something that comes at it from a specific elimination approach. It's not a matter of counting calories. It is not a matter of finding some perfect macro calculator. It is certainly not a specific elimination diet or anything like that. It's eating in a way that your body perceives safety, eating in a way where your body perceives consistency and predictability. And in that pattern, it feels like, oh, adrenals are happy, food is coming in on a consistent basis, I love this, energy is good. When your body feels safe and fueled, that's when it starts to release excess energy stores, aka fat. Fat is really just our body as a protective mechanism. It's holding on to it for a reason. And like I said, those daily symptoms of things like fatigue, insomnia, cravings, weight gain, low libido, low immune function, needing caffeine, all of those things are really just our body compensating for low energy availability. We need to figure out where is that coming from. So in this quest of really understanding the foundation of your hormone hierarchy, I want you guys to think proactive management of your health. The foundation is there for a reason. The foundation is a food first, lifestyle first approach. It is what it is. It's the hard work putting in some of those changes before you really think about any of the, call it the sexy stuff. It's not the sexy stuff. You're going to be spinning your wheels and wasting your money on the sexy stuff and the supplements until you master the big rocks first, which is where that adrenal health comes in. So we're going to dive into a little bit more around things like blood sugar balance, other controllable, uncontrollable stressors around lifestyle and exercise, but that at least gives you guys a overall view of, hey, when it comes to my hormone hierarchy, a lot of these symptoms that I'm feeling probably come together. Even things like gut stuff, attack your adrenals first. Even things like sex hormone imbalances, attack your adrenals first. You think you have thyroid issues, it's probably an adrenal issue first and foremost. So you can't go anywhere without checking this one off of the box first. So you guys asked some really great questions around adrenal health, so I want to make sure that I answer some of those on the fly. Some of them will, like I said, I kind of already covered, so I'll give some good quick answers to them. But then I thought there was some really great questions coming in, and I can see your guys' wheels spinning around just some more curiosities into this hormone balance world. So I want to make sure that we address those. So the first question that came in here was this concept of, like I said, adrenal fatigue. Is it true? Is it a trend? Going back to the term adrenal fatigue, where originally researchers were talking about this concept that your adrenals and your cortisol and your stress, they run high for so long that they just eventually like burn out and stop working. That concept is outdated. We know that that truly doesn't happen. Your adrenals do not burn out, but the communication or the feedback loop between the adrenals and the brain, that feedback loop almost becomes a little bit like the boy that cried wolf, right? It's like it sees it multiple times a day, every day, and now it's not responding the same way that it used to. So instead of considering it adrenal fatigue, we call it HPA axis dysregulation is a more appropriate term for the past adrenal fatigue type conversation. Same symptoms, very real condition. So just because I say like, it's more of a terminology fix than discrediting this as a legitimate issue, because it's a very legitimate issue. We just want to make sure that we coin it and treat it correctly. Someone asked, what are the best supplements for adrenals? Again, food first approach. You are never going to out supplement a poor diet. If you are not eating in a way that supports blood sugar balance, if you're not eating in a way that promotes safety to your body, if you're not sleeping circadian rhythm, trying to treat it like this calories in, calories out transactional approach with your exercise routine, like you are literally going to be spinning your wheels and wasting your money on adrenal supportive supplements. But for those people that have put in the work to do the food first and lifestyle first changes, some of the best supplemental categories that I tend to go to first would be like your herbal blends, especially some of the mushroom extracts like your ashwagandha, your reishi, other things like valerian root, passion flower, even some certain amino acids like L-theanine. So there's some great supplements out there in the herbal realm that can really help, and even some glandulars. But again, those should be used under the guidance of a practitioner, because you have to do the big rock stuff first, or you're literally just wasting your money. So at least, like I said, know that the big food first stuff comes before the supplements. But otherwise, you can look into some great ones. I know Designs for Health is a brand that I use a lot, and they have a great herbal blend. It's called Catacholacom. So if you guys want the link for that Catacholacom, that's a great blend of some herbal supplements that I use pretty frequently for specific adrenal support. What are some examples of stress related to diet? So this person was specifically asking, how am I maybe creating stress in my diet? Love this question. Underfueling. So underfueling your basal metabolic rate and activity levels combined, that's going to be a big one. As long as you are chronically underfueling, skipping meals, not eating enough calories for your daily energy burn, stress. Probably the biggest one. You do not have to be a high intensity athlete or even be exercising on a regular basis to be underfueling your basal metabolic rate and activity levels. I see it all the time. So underfueling would be a big way that people are creating stress through their daily nutritional choices. And then the other one would be nutrient deficiencies, not eating enough protein or protein diversity, not eating enough fiber or fiber diversity, or even getting into micronutrient imbalances, which is very common for people that are following a particular diet that demonizes or eliminates an entire food group, like vegan. They're going to have nutrient deficiencies. Keto, carnivore, you're definitely going to have nutrient deficiencies. So cutting out major food groups are going to be other ways that you're creating stress through your diet as well. Someone also asked, what does the adrenal problems feel like? I kind of already covered that. Again, individuals that usually have trouble falling asleep, staying asleep, you're waking in the middle of the night, you're craving sugar, salt, caffeine, your low immune function. I made a specific post about signs and symptoms of cortisol imbalances yesterday, so go back to my feed to really find and see if you identify with any of those signs and symptoms of cortisol imbalances. Someone also asked, my labs look normal. What do I ask for? What do I test for? We can test for cortisol. There are some good, better, best ways to test for cortisol. We can do it in the serum or in the blood. You can also look for other tests that use things like saliva, use like dried urine analysis testing. Honestly, you don't really have to do any fancy testing with the adrenals. A lot of times you can just go based off of symptomology. I ask people all the time, like, how does a typical day feel for you? What's that? And you'll know pretty quick where you need to support. But also asking for a full Monty blood sugar panel is probably one of the best ways to look at your overall adrenal health. So things like fasting glucose, fasting insulin, morning cortisol level, triglycerides, or triglyceride to HDL ratio specifically, hemoglobin A1C. So getting a full blood sugar panel is probably one of the best ways to look at your overall adrenal health too. And then making sure that someone knows how to interpret that. Someone asked about this adrenal mocktail. They were like, is this true or is this a trend? This adrenal mocktail, if you've seen it out on more of the pro-metabolic eating platforms, is more of a trend. I love the idea of the adrenal mocktail. Individuals that are in this really deep state of adrenal burnout, because adrenals are responsible for regulating mineral balance and hydration. If you are stressed, you are draining minerals like crazy. Things like magnesium, sodium, potassium, vitamin C, all of those fancy things that are very, very helpful for the state of regulating blood sugar balance and hydration and overall blood volume and blood pressure. So this concept of the adrenal mocktail came out to be to help people replenish these minerals naturally. Again, they're using some mixtures of things like coconut water, which is a great potassium source, cream of tartar, which is a potassium source, straight up citrus juices like orange juices, grapefruit juices, because those are great sources of vitamin C, and then using things like sea salt for a sodium. So they're really just different recipes of truly mocktails where you're mixing together magnesium, potassium, and sodium sources and drinking them outside of your meals for additional minerals. Not a bad idea, but if you are also not eating in a way that supports blood sugar balance first, it doesn't matter. It literally doesn't matter. Another one of those like upper 10%, you're kind of wasting your time with the adrenal mocktails if you don't have the big rocks managed first. Plus, a lot of people who do have blood sugar imbalances or adrenal issues can't necessarily tolerate carbohydrates in juice form. It makes their blood sugar balance worse. So someone has to be ready for that. And I think that there are smarter ways to be able to get minerals from whole food sources. So that's usually what I coach my clients to. I introduce them to the concept of the mineral mocktail. For certain people, it can be helpful. But for other people, it usually just ends up being more unnecessary sugar in the form of juice and what I call a naked carb, which usually just doesn't promote really ideal blood sugar balance. And then there's other people out there that are trying to promote it as like an actual meal. If you mix it with like collagen and coconut cream or something, that is not a meal, people. You are not going to make a meal out of an adrenal mocktail, even if it has collagen powder in it. Okay, that is not food. That is not a food replacement. And your body knows that. And again, not necessarily addressing the adrenals from a root cause approach. So like I said, be careful about all the different like trends and things out there. If you guys have more questions about those, you know I'm a straight shooter, so send them my way and I'd be happy to talk about those types of things when it comes to just debunking any of those particular trends. But as far as the adrenal health goes, know that this lies at the foundation of your hormone hierarchy. If you do not manage adrenal health first, it will manifest into gut issues. It will manifest into a sluggish liver. It will manifest into future thyroid issues, autoimmune issues, sex hormone imbalances, everything down the road always usually trends back towards adrenals. So this is going to be the first place that you're going to want to target for your overall hormone healing journey. If you guys have more questions about this or you want a little bit more guidance on this, you can always head to the link in my profile. The link in my profile there will give you an opportunity to apply to work with me one-on-one. So if you are interested in one-on-one services, you do have to fill out an application form for that first. So fill out that application form and I'll get back to you with kind of next steps if I feel like we would be a great fit. Also, if you guys feel like I'm really digging this hormone hierarchy that she's talking about, I'm really intrigued by how the adrenals relate to the gut and relate to my thyroid and relate to my sex hormones. If you're interested in really putting your whole hormone health journey together, obviously stay tuned for some of my future Learn with Lows, but also I am opening my early bird registration wait list for my upcoming course, which will launch at the beginning of 2023. It is going to be called Revive, Restore, Renew Your Hormones, and it is going to be a 3-month intensive course that's going to be literally spilling out all of my knowledge on how to manage the entire hormone hierarchy proactively through nutrition, lifestyle, and supplemental interventions. So it's going to be an amazing 3-month ride. If you know that you want in on that, the spots will be limited. So be sure to check that link in my profile because there's a spot to claim your spot on the roster for that early bird registration. No money down or anything required, but just to claim your spot to get more announcements as that registration goes live. So much fun stuff happening behind the scenes. If nothing else, tune back to Learn with Lo next week. We're going to be diving into more concepts just like this and more detail. So if you have any questions on adrenal health, in the meantime, make sure to pop them my way. Otherwise, I hope you guys have an amazing day and are pumped for all of the more science to come.